Hi everybody, it's Chris Moyes at the Vinyl Orchard, and welcome to another video. Thank you very much for joining me again. I've got a whole variety of stuff to share with you today. This is stuff I've picked up over December of last year and January, first part of January 2024. So a variety of stuff, 7-inch, 10-inch albums, some CDs, and also a variety of genres too. So let's get started. Let's 10-inch single to start. So you'll know that if you watch this a lot, I'm a Deep Purple fan. I didn't realise I didn't have this from the UK discography. This is Throw My Bones on 10-inch. I've just got this from eBay, so it's still in the shrink. Haven't opened it yet. I've got the track on CD, but obviously when you're a collector, you've got to have everything, haven't you? So that's Deep Purple. Next up is the second single from UK punk band The Users. This is Kicks in Style on Warped Records from 1978. Now, their first single rather, which was 1977, is the collectible one. It's called Sick of You, I think, which is a good track. I think this one is better, but that first single is far more collectible. And whenever I've seen that first one, it's been prohibitively expensive, actually. I picked this up for £1, and I was delighted with that, because when you look on Discogs, its mid-price is about 25. So this is a really nice song. It's produced by a guy called Dave Goodman, who was involved with the Sex Pistols in the early days, and it's got a nice kind of raucous, raw energy to it. So that's Kicks in Style by The Users. And this next one is a band I knew nothing about. It's a complete blind buy, because I kind of thought the cover was quite interesting. And the band are called Destroy All Monsters. Now, if you know anything about this band, let me know. It's got a nice kind of DIY cover and label. The song is called Bored. I think this is their first, looking at Discogs, this is their first single. I thought the band looked quite interesting. It kind of looks like Lemmy, actually. A mixture of kind of looks and styles, and that almost summarises the sound of this band, actually, because I can't work it out. I can't work out what it's meant to be. It's got a female vocalist, which is quite jarring, actually, and some of the music is quite jarring and a bit, all over the place. It's quite raw. And it's difficult to kind of categorise and pigeonhole, actually, which is not a bad thing. But they're an American band. There's an address on here for Michigan, so I don't know if they're from Detroit, I'm not sure. But if anyone knows anything about this band, let me know. So that's their debut from '78 called Bored. Right, nice stack of vinyl albums to share with you, actually. Variety of genres here. So I've got some blues, some synth pop, some prog, some punk, some jazz fusion, prog, load of different stuff. First one up is the debut album from Luther Allison and the Blue Nebulae. This is Love Me Mama on Delmark Records. Now this is essentially a bunch of blues covers. Now I don't mind blues people covering other blues songs, actually. I think it works in that genre. It doesn't seem to work very well in others, but it does in the blues. So this has got, B.B. King covers, Elmore James, Robert Johnson, Sonny Boy Williamson, all of those kinds of people, their stuff being covered to really good effect, actually. There's some kind of classic songs in here, Little Red Rooster, Dust My Broom, Skies Crying, that kind of stuff. So really good album. Is it as good as his others? I've only heard a few of his others. I've got Luther's Blues, which is really good. It's probably an album from a guy who's kind of finding his way. I think he's a Chicago blues man. Tight little band, including Jimmy Fast Fingers Dawkins on the guitar with him. But there we are. There's the debut album on Delmark, original first press from 1970. Next up, another debut album from a guy called Walter Trout. This is the Walter Trout Band and Life in the Jungle, half live, half studio. It's recorded in Scandinavia. In fact, it's on a Scandinavian label, actually, TDP or something like that. Recorded in Stockholm and I think possibly Denmark. The studio tracks are good, but the live tracks are tremendous. A couple of covers on here, including a really, really good live cover of Jimi Hendrix's Red House, which is very, very good. There's also a track in here called Cold, Cold Feeling, which I think is possibly an Albert King. And I think there were at least one John Lee Hooker track on here as well. So good stuff from Walter Trout. Now, next up, I've got 3 synth pop albums, one of which I showed on my vinyl tag video, actually, which I'll come to in a moment. But 1980 was a really good year for synth pop. So we had Vienna, Ultravox, we had OMD bringing out that year, Gary Newman, and we had these 3 as well. And I think these three are three that really contributed to the whole sound of that era, actually. The first one is probably the most polished of the three, and it's the debut album from Visage with Steve Strange on the cover there. So this was a band that features Midure and Rusty Egan, both of which had been in a band with Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols called the Rich Kids. Also has John McGeoch on it, who goes on to work with Susie and the Banshees, and a really influential guitarist, actually. There isn't, though, much guitar on this. It's kind of synth heavy, really, but a really tidy bunch of musicians on here. And this is an album which I think is almost one of the best albums of the new romantic kind of movement, actually. In the track Fade to Grey, I don't know if there is a better song from the new romantic stuff actually than that. I think that's an absolute classic. The other single on this I think was Mind of a Toy, I think possibly, but really tight band, as I said, good musicians, good sounding, layered synths, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, a bit Kraftwerk influenced, of course, maybe a bit Bowie influenced, of course, but a really nice album from 1980. It's Visage, their debut. The second one is the second album from a band who went on to kind of define synth pop in many ways with an album called Dare, and that was the album that followed this one. This is the Human League and Travelogue. I often call it Travel Lodge, but anyway, Travelogue. Someone else did an album called Travelogue, didn't they? Who was that? Who did an album called Travelogue? Anyway, I can't remember, but this is their second album, and this is a million miles, really, though, from the sound of Dare. You haven't got those female backing singers as yet. There's a couple of guys on here. This is I think this is the last album to feature the original lineup of the Human League. A couple of guys went on to be in Heaven 17 after this, and then obviously a couple of people on here, Phil Oakley being the main one, went on to form that kind of pop version of the Human League. And there are some elements of that on here, some elements of that pop direction, but on the whole, this is fairly stark, quite avant-garde in places, quite almost not emotionless, but quite sparse in its sound, and a really good album actually. I really enjoyed that album. Do I like it as much as a Visage? I'm not sure. It hasn't got a Fade to Grey on it, but overall, it's probably as good. This last one of the three, I think, is probably the best of the three. And it's an album that a couple of people mentioned in the comments when I shared it on the vinyl tag, because it's the last album I bought in 2023. It's the debut album from John Foxx, Metamatic. And this is, I think this is a great album. This guy, very European influenced, I think, on here. So it's very, it's, again, very sparse, very experimental, completely electronic. He's got that kind of image and that kind of vocal delivery, which is, really kind of defines this sound, actually. Couple of songs on here which were singles: Underpass, No One Driving. No One Driving is about driverless cars. That's really forward thinking for the time, wasn't it? There's a track on here called Touch and Go, which there's a version where it's called Dr. X, I think, on Vienna by Ultravox, because there's a couple of songs on here that were written by the original Ultravox, the ones with the exclamation mark, and not credited. And I think Ultravox then went on to do Mr. X, Dr. X, whatever it was called, which is basically like Touch and Go from here, but and no one was credited for that. So really interesting album. As I said, very European sounding, sparse, experimental, good, really, really good stuff. Really enjoyed that. Couple of three prog albums. I'm guessing this band you could class as prog. This is an album which was recommended to me by a couple of people actually as being their kind of defining moment, almost a turning point for the band. Essentially what this is a best of a particular era. Now, quite often, I think Rush did this actually, where they'd often do a live album that kind of summarised what had come before they then moved on to other things. And this is a bit like that. So this is Barclay James Harvest Live from 74, I think. It's on Polydor Records. And it's basically live versions of lots of tracks that appear from their Harvest days. Now, I've got a few James Harvest albums, and I struggle with them. I'm not a great fan of listening to an orchestra, and the beauty of this album is that the orchestra is not there. It's completely replaced by the mellotron. In fact, I don't think in the history of music there's an album that uses the mellotron more than this particular album. So this is, it's pretty proggy. There's some, I think, some definitive versions of some of their songs on here. Actually, if I go back to some of the originals, a good example of that is Medicine Man. That's a really good track, and so is Summer Soldier. So the first side is really good. It's got their classic Mockingbird on here, which is an excellent version. There's a lot of mellotron. There's also some nice guitar moments as well. So can't remember the guitarist's name, but nice guitarist, especially on something like She Said. Nice bit of guitar on there. It's quite muddy in its production. And I think there is another live album by them actually, which has a lot better recording. So I'm not saying it sounds like a bootleg, but it is a little bit muddy, but that somehow adds to its charm actually. It's almost like you're watching this or are listening to this on a really kind of crap hi-fi, back in the day kind of thing. It has that kind of sound to it. But nice album, Barclay James Harvest. I've got a few by them. That's easily the best one for me anyway. Next one up is a compilation. Again, a compilation of a band's previous stuff really. And this is, I think, often overlooked as a compilation. And I was really pleased to find this and pick it up for cheap actually. This is Relics by Pink Floyd, which lots of you will have seen and lots of you will have. I've got a sneaking suspicion that one of the band drew this. I don't know if it's Nick Mason actually, I'm not sure, but anyway, interesting cover, interesting back. It's kind of like a summary, if you like, of the singles and the B-sides that came up prior to that. So Arnold Lane, See Emily Play, which was a non-album track, wasn't it? They're obviously on here. Careful with the Axe Eugene is on here, and Interstellar Overdrive, really nice instrumental, is on here. So it's their kind of psychedelic era, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it's certainly a nice little compilation of songs on Starline, EMI Starline Records. I don't know when that came out. Is that 1971-ish, 70, something like that? Next up, last of the prog stuff. This is a band that I've never truly understood, but it was a fiver, and I thought I'll give it a go. It's much more of a band album than I think I've previously heard from them. The band is Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This is the album Trilogy from 72, 3, 4, something around there. I think it's their third or fourth album. And as I said, it's the most band album. It's quite, for them, I think it's reasonably polished. It's quite well produced. I think in places possibly a little bit too clean for their kind of sound, and it hasn't got that edge that maybe previous albums or things like Brain Salad Surgery or Tarkus maybe have. But it's not bad. A lot of the songs, there are some moments in here will keep prog fans happy without a doubt. The Endless Enigma springs to mind. But there's also some concise songs on there and a lot more vocals than maybe you might get previously on other ELP albums. So we've got some stellar musicians on here. Certainly Keith Emerson and Carl Palmer were seen as forerunners in their particular instrument for a long period of time. So yeah, not bad. I'm quite enjoying listening to that. In complete contrast, we've got a band that I always thought was a New York band actually, but it works out that they're from Cleveland, Ohio actually, which I didn't realise. And it's the Dead Boys. And this is their album Young, Loud and Snotty. Now, I don't know how many albums they did. This may be their only one, actually. And I just thought they were a New York band. They're on Sire Records, so the same one as Ramones. And who else was on that? Talking Heads, I think, weren't they? This was a band who were regulars at CBGB's. And as a result of that, signed with Sire and produced this album. Now, Young, Loud and Snotty... in combination, the title in combination with the picture really summarises what this is going to sound like. This is raw as you like. It's really in your face. The lead-off track, which is a classic actually, I think, Sonic Reducer, is proper good New York punk, and the rest of the album is fairly close behind actually. So if you like that kind of genre of music, I know it's not for everybody, and I don't know if I could listen to the whole album. You know, it's like lots of punk, I have to listen to it in short bursts, but this is a really good album. I'm really pleased to find that and add that to my punk collection. And the last of the albums is, again, complete contrast to that. I did a video recently on jazz fusion and some recommendations from my collection, some of my collection. And so I've just added to that today. I found this album just for £4, which I thought was okay. Larry Coryell and the 11th House. This is live at Montreux Jazz Festival in probably mid-70s, I would think. Got a really good band together here. We've got Mike Mandel, who's a blind keyboard player. We've got Alphonse Mouzon, fantastic drummer. Danny Tryfon on bass, Larry Coryell. It's also got some horns on this one, a trumpet, yeah. Michael Lawrence. Starts off with a kind of acoustic and then gets more and more fusion as the album goes on, actually, and it finishes with probably the best song on here, which is the 11th House Blues. So quite pleased to add that to my collection today. I've only played it through once, but it sounds reasonable. Excuse me. A few CDs to finish. Some Deep Purple related stuff. So I picked up this the other day. This is Paris 1975. These are a series of CDs that came out in probably about 10 years ago now, and I've always kind of fought against buying them because there's really not much new on them. In fact, the only thing new on here is an interview from 1975 with David Coverdale, Ian Pace and Glenn Hughes. Otherwise, it's pretty much identical. It is identical to this, which came out a while ago on Purple Records. This is Live in Paris, a 2 CD set. So the tracks are exactly the same, but if you're a collector, you're going to have them. Now, in that series also is this one, Copenhagen 1972, and I already possess the Sonic Zoom CD that came out quite a while ago now, which is a CD version of the concert that appears on a video, which came out in the sort of possibly 80s, maybe even 70s, I'm not sure. Really good. It's from March 1972. Really good concert, great sound. The reason I got this is because there are some bonus tracks on here. And the bonus tracks come from a live performance that was televised in New York in 1973, plus an interview from 1971 from Australia. And so I haven't got that, so I had to add that to the collection. And another one from that same series is this one, Stockholm 1970. This has got a DVD on it as well, actually, which is pretty good. Speaking, Child in Time, Ring That Neck, Mandrake Root. So some live performances, which are really worth watching. But this also has some bonus stuff on it that hasn't appeared on CD before, because this has been reissued twice before. And yeah, guess what? I've got both of them. So this came out, this is probably late 90s, I would think, in those big, great big cumbersome box. This is Scandinavian Nights by Deep Purple. And then it was brought out on Purple Records a number of years later, and the running order was recorrected to be in the right order, and it's this one here, which is called Live in Stockholm 1972, which is definitely the best one of the three. But as I said, this one does include some bonus stuff from Paris, which is okay. Mandrake Root is good. It's long, but it's good, and it's an interview with John Lord. Ring That Neck is just Richie Blackmore noodling away on his guitar, really, but the bonus DVD is pretty interesting. So that was nice. And some other Purple stuff. I got this the other day from 2001, so there's a recording in Hong Kong. 2 CD set, features the Morse lineup of Deep Purple. There's a number of CDs in this series. I kind of like this brown paper look, actually. There's quite a few of very similar era, similar kind of track listing, but pretty interesting. This was another one that's the Morse era, but very early Morse era. So this is from 1995, recorded in Bombay. Nice mix of songs. So Pictures of Home is on here, for example, which is great to hear. Anya as well, Child in Time, Fireball. And so this is a 3 CD with a DVD as well. So that's a nice Bombay Calling Deep Purple. So that's nice. And the last one I'll share with you today I've got this already, not on vinyl. I'm still hunting for it on vinyl, actually. This is the debut album from a band called Zephyr, which Tommy Bolin, who was the replacement for Richie Blackmore in Deep Purple, this was one of his first bands, if not his first band, actually. So they had a debut album just called Zephyr. This I've got on CD, but this is a 3 CD set, which has the original album, plus it has some live tracks and some kind of studio outtakes and so on as well, and is a really nice addition actually to my stuff that features the guitar talents of Tommy Bolin. So a very young Tommy Bolin on that particular CD. So there you go, there's my stuff. Tell me what you think in the comments below, and I'm sure I'll be back sometime soon with another video. Thanks all, cheers.